So welcome, guys. Like I said, this is the last day of Action for Earth Week, the first edition we've ever done of this event. My name is Magda, and I work with the Earth Prize. And it's my pleasure to introduce you to this competition, which is the largest environmental competition for young people aged 13 to 19. And you can join from wherever you are in the world. We have a huge community of change makers, young people really doing their best for the climate and for the environment. And once you join the Earth Prize, you get the support of mentors. You can get support from volunteers that we have from universities working on your projects. You get access to our closed Discord platform where you can participate in exclusive events. So we do encourage you to take a look at this QR code, which we'll be maybe switching to later as well, but it takes you straight to onboarding. So you can join the community and potentially, work on your winning idea on Discord and connect with like-minded people. The registrations close on the 10th of January. So there is some time still, but if you don't want to miss the events that we have planned for every single week, we encourage you to join as soon as possible. And without further ado, I would love to introduce our guest, Paul Rose, who's working with National Geographic Pristine Seas. And it's my pleasure that you're here, Paul. Thank you so much for being a part of Action for Earth. I cannot wait for this presentation.
Well, thanks very much, Magda. Great to see you again. And hello, everybody. Thanks for joining me online here, wherever you are. We know we've got some from Canada. So the thing with these, until we're finished, we don't know where you're all from. So I'm assuming that some of you are having morning breakfast, some are having tea, some are having lunch. Some of you may be in a really exotic, exciting place watching on the phone. And so wherever you are, very welcome to my talk about the ocean. And I think the most important thing to think about with the ocean is where you got excited about the ocean. Where is that thing? What is it that excites you about the ocean? Is it a particular charismatic megafauna? Dolphins, whales, seals, what is it? Is it the science element? Is it the sense of the great unknown? Well, for me, it was all about the adventure, getting physically engaged with the ocean. I loved the water as a boy. I was always in trouble with my parents for spending too long in the water, out of sight of land. And instead of just having a little dip and getting freezing cold in 20 minutes, like most people in England, I would be at sea for a few hours, drifting around, happy. And I didn't care where I pitched up. I knew I would somehow bump into land, and I loved that thing. And then around about 11 years old, I fell in love with the idea of being a proper ocean adventurer via this television program called Sea Hunt. And it's every week. Mike Nelson, is his name, was showing up on my television screen, having proper testosterone fueled adventures. He was rescuing miners from flooded mines and rescuing pilots from aircraft that had crashed in the sea. And just look at the title of this one: Mike Nelson battles armored car robbers underwater at a desert lake. So if you're an 11-year-old boy hating everything to do with school and just dreaming, that's where I wanted to be. So then in 1969, I actually became a diver. And I just double checked the sums. That's 56 years ago. And I still remember that feeling of being at a place called Portland Bill on the south coast of Britain, Easter 1969, in my homemade wetsuit. In those days, you couldn't buy a wetsuit. You had to buy the neoprene material and a paper pattern and cut round it and glue it together. And of course, having also been influenced by Jacques Cousteau, I taped the seams with that yellow tape. So I looked as much as Jacques Cousteau as I possibly could. And I made that first scuba dive. And I can still remember the feeling of that cold water coming in my poorly fitting suit. And as the ocean came in, I was never more alive. I just suddenly felt there I was, 18 years old, my first ever dive in the ocean. And I felt like I was an ocean explorer in the world's largest, most powerful, least understood, least protected ecosystem on the planet. Now, those words still are true. It still is the least understood and least protected. But that feeling of being free in the wild places triggered all kinds of things. interestingly, it triggered me to do other things like become a mountaineer. And I was leading and guiding expeditions in the North Pacific Northwest in the States and Ecuador and here, Alaska. I started to get an appetite for the wild places like Greenland and led Arctic expeditions. Started working for science expeditions. Here I am on the Greenland ice cap, collecting ice to measure ancient methane on a climate change project. Here, drilling ice cores on glaciers, or having really great, ambitious mountaineering plans in the truly wild places. And it was the diving and the love of diving that got me going in the world's wild places. I eventually became the base commander for the British Antarctic Survey for 10 years and ran that place, which inarguably is the most beautiful research station on the planet, wouldn't you agree? And from there, we ran expeditions, science expeditions, all the way to the South Pole, between 20 and 50 expeditions every year. Small ones like this to large ones like this, where you've got whopping great ski-equipped aircraft coming into your camp. Or even working for NASA. Here I am working for NASA on Mount Erebus, which is Antarctica's active volcano. And that's us testing the Mars lander robot, the robots that are now on Mars, and this is us testing it in Antarctica. But for me, it was the diving, of course, that kept me going during all those Antarctic years. We're here actually measuring limpets because, being able to take your technical skills, I mean, I'm a diver, but let's say you're a carpenter or electrician or a plumber or a boat driver or an airplane pilot or a communications expert. There's a job for you in the front line of science. So for me, this is a great demonstration of, frontline science really getting places, science support. So we're just divers. The man on the right, Lloyd Peck, he's a scientist, and he had a hypothesis, an idea that we could look at past climate by measuring the growth rate and thickness of limpet shells. So we would swim around, collect hundreds of limpets. Lloyd would number them and put them on very cold glass slides in the laboratory, measure the thickness of the shells, and then he could look, because he knows how old limpets are, because they grow a little bit like tree rings, and he could see how the growth rate was. He could look at past climate by making very careful measurements of how much ice there must have been. So how much light came through and helped them grow. So it's amazing to be involved in a climate change project, swimming around collecting limpets, and of course, the attraction of diving in challenging conditions for me is what it's always been about. And then after a lifetime of diving, what feels like a lifetime of diving, I managed to get the opportunity 12 years ago of joining National Geographic Pristine Seas. And I'm the head of expeditions. So I keep all of the front line, the sharp end running. So we've got a media team, we've got a policy team, we've got a science team, all the whole group that keep this whole project together. We're a large project team, National Geographic. There's 57 of us. And at any one time at sea, there's about 18 of us at sea. So keep this whole project together. You can see we're very busy. We've had 45 expeditions. That number's a bit out of date. We're at 48 now. We've protected 6.9 million square kilometers. And when you think there's only just over 7 million square kilometers protected, it gives you a good idea how busy we are. And we've produced well over 300 scientific publications. So that gives you an idea how busy we are. And quick look at the map. We're working from the Arctic to the Antarctic and all the warm places in between. And here's a video of what it's like to be on a Pristine Seas expedition.
We are defined by the environments that we live in. It's our life. The ocean is our life.
It's not only an issue of economic, it's really about emotions.
This is one of these rare places on Earth where we can see the ocean of the past.
Miren hacia el mar y se miren las personas, porque si no hay recursos, no hay vida. Lento, pero empezó la pesca comercial. Había una capturas masivas que aquí ya no era suficiente para vivir.
This species could go extinct in my lifetime.
The big fish are gone. They have been fished out.
As a global community, we need to decide what's the value of the ocean.
People protect what they love, and they love what they understand, which is where we fit in.
The moment I set my eyes on these places, I know why we're here.
Conservation needs to be based on a sound understanding of how these ecosystems work, whether it's traditional knowledge or contemporary science.
These remote camera systems give us a complete picture of the life in the waters from the near shore to the deepest ocean depths.
Es muy importante trabajar con los pueblos originarios y las comunidades locales, porque han sido los verdaderos custodios de los lugares más frágiles del planeta.
Y si unimos, podemos hacer tal potencia que no la va a poder derribar nadie.
They're our young leaders. We have to empower them with the passion to conserve the ocean.
I will work to declare Palau's waters closed to commercial fishing.
Dos nuevos parques y o áreas marinas protegidas.
Y se constituye en un líder mundial en la conservación marina.
For us to remain this way for the future and for our young people, we have to ensure we help preserve our environment.
The answer is not coming from outside, it's going to be within.
Seeing the planet as it used to be, see the ocean as it should be, and trying to bring it back.
So that's us on Pristine Seas. And we had a moment in 2008 where Enric Sala, you saw him briefly on the video there, he was the man who started, he's our founder of Pristine Seas. And he was working as a professor at Scripps University in California. And he had one of those moments. He realized, in his words, that every single science paper he wrote and published was like writing an obituary for the ocean, because he was just writing on awareness. We knew all these things, but not much was happening. And he was getting very frustrated that there was no real action. And of course, the stresses on the ocean remain the same today. You know, we've got climate change, overfishing, and pollution. These are the three main stresses. So what could he do? So he felt that the thing to do would be looking at the ocean a bit like a bank account. If we just keep taking money out, there'll be nothing left. So why not find the pristine places, like your savings account in the bank, find those last wild, truly pristine places and protect them. As a good first step, let's get those done. So that's why the project was called Pristine Seas, and it was a world's first. And there's a scientific method which is recognized all over the world. It's unique to us. There are some unique elements in there, but the methodology is repeated around the world by all marine scientists. You can see that we dive down to about 50 meters. We have baited cameras from the surface to about 65 meters. And we have open water cameras that drift around, these pelagic cameras. Then we've got some technical diving down to 100 meters. We have our three-person submarine. That has now changed. That's now down to 1,400 meters. And drop cameras that go all the way to 6,000 meters deep. So that on any given day on an expedition, even though I'm leading these, I still sometimes find it hard to believe how much ground we've covered. You know, we're on our ship, we've got the submarine, we've got the 4 work boats going in, as you saw on the video. And the work boats go out every morning to deploy the cameras. And some of the cameras are out overnight, 14 hours. And some of the cameras are in for 2 hours. So there's constant rotation of those cameras, bringing them back in, changing them, charging them up, replacing the bait, and getting them out. And to do that, our small boats, the small boat that deploys and recovers those cameras, typically travels about 100 nautical miles every single day. The science teams are diving 3 or 4 dives a day, and the media team are diving 2 or 3 dives a day, and the submarine is making 1 or 2 dives a day. So at the end of every day, the amount of data that comes back is absolutely massive. We also use special tools like this stereoscopic camera, which is a smart way of looking at how coral has grown by traveling a grid over what's previously been measured. And we can then see visually, and also once we compile that data, measure very accurate data, how much that coral has grown. But there's nothing like the visual observation, is there? These powerful personal experiences, field observations, and science data points are incredibly valuable. And they're the things that I think we need even more today than we ever did, because in some parts of the world, science is being questioned unbelievably, and science is being not supported. So our voices from science data points and from science fieldwork is ever more important, because it's indisputably accurate. If there's less fish, there's less fish. If there's coral in great condition, there's coral in great condition. If the ocean is seeing stresses from pollution or from climate change, they are the facts. So when we come back from those expeditions with, firstly, that look, you know, you have a look when you come back from a powerful experience. And that look, you know, your friends, you can go open your door to your friend and first have a look at them and go, wow, where have you been? And that person has been on some amazing expedition. They have a look in their eyes, don't they? Well, so do we when we come back from the sea. And so do our scientists. And that means that they have then this extra sort of platform to speak about what they've seen. So science results, science observations, powerful personal experiences, and science data really is helping to drive global economies and smart political decision making. So today, we've never needed these experiences ever more. So we talk about pristine, how we measure pristineness. Well, here's one of our senior scientists on a dive with me. And just by looking at that picture, I know he's happy and he's thinking, yep, this is a pristine place. Obviously, we've got more special techniques and scientific methods, but it's just that first look at the place. We use our submarine. Our submarine goes down to 1,400 meters. There's me in there being filmed on the way down. We have a pilot in the back and 2 observers in the front. And that means we can take people like here's the submarine on the back of our ship, me on the left, and the president of Vanuatu next to me. And we're speaking about him preparing for a dive to come with us. Because imagine how powerful that is when the decision makers, the president of a country comes with us in the submarine and sees the deep part of their ocean for the very first time. Maybe they've spent their whole career making great messages about the ocean and environmental leadership. In this case, Vanuatu in particular, they've been doing a great job. But they've been saying that message repeatedly. Now, after a powerful experience like a submarine dive, firstly, it's very visual, it's very exciting, it has a real appeal. You can imagine that just after that submarine dive, it's almost like we've given them a springboard for their message. It may be the same message they've been saying, more or less, but they've just come out from that. They say, I've just seen this for myself. And maybe they've seen signs of illegal fishing. Miles and miles of nets and fishing lines everywhere. Maybe they've seen degraded reefs from overfishing or climate change. Or maybe they've seen unbelievable, beautiful ocean scenery, and they've re-fallen back in love with their own ocean environment, and then it puts them in a better position to communicate it. So one of our obviously we need the science tools, but one of our greatest tools we have, and we're very lucky to have it, is that submarine right there. We can go in with, here's one of our media cameramen. You can see Eric, the pilot, in the back, and our scientist on the right there. And also we can bring local chiefs and tribal leaders and community leaders down with us in the submarine. When we arrive on site, this happens. We love to work with the local people. And of course, we can't just arrive in a situation and just do something like we were helicoptered in and do something. We spend at least 2 years working with each of our host countries so that when we arrive, we understand them, they understand us, and we can live by the plan that we're just filling in the gaps. These countries, oceanic countries, know a lot about their ocean, probably more than we ever will. But there are limits as to how deep they can go, how far they can go. So we've got all of their culture, all of their history, all of their contemporary knowledge, but we can go further, deeper, longer, and we're in a position to compare it with other ocean ecosystems, other parts of the world. So by partnering up with them and filling in the gaps, we can make sure it's fully comprehensive, and from the whole of their work plus our work, means that there's a beautiful data at the end of it, and it's then they make their decisions on what they're going to do with their ocean, how they're going to protect it, what part they're going to protect it, how much they're going to protect. And as you well know, most countries these days are fully engaged with the 30 by 30 campaign, which is to protect 30% of the land and ocean by 2030, as is Vanuatu here. So we spend a long time working with the local communities. We have local scientists on board with us, and they dive with us every day. If they're not divers, then they help us find sites and work with us, and we accept their guidance every day. And when we're in these villages, we have them come on board too. So once we've met them, typically there's a moment where we're greeted in some traditional way. We then get the chance to meet everybody. There's a whole feeling of engagement here. And this is a very lovely one in Vanuatu. I was in Vanuatu only a couple of months ago, and just looking at this image brings back a lot of terrific memories. And then we meet with the key people in the village, on the community, and they help us make sure that we understand it correctly as to where we go, where we shouldn't go. They'll have taboo areas where they're protected so that they helps their sustainable fishing, or they're protected for other reasons, and we don't want to dive in there. And then we give presentations who we are to the whole community and what we're about. All these, you can imagine how we do this in the community. It's a great feeling. And there's often a moment before we do this when I meet the chief. And these chiefs are highly respected members of the community. And there's a moment when I first meet the chief, and I swear that he looks into my eyes and I think, wow, in 3 seconds, he knows everything about me. They just have a presence. They've been running that community for their whole lives, and they just have this amazing presence. And one of the most rewarding things is when we can then get the chief in the submarine with one of our senior scientists diving. Can you imagine what a powerful moment that is? We come off the ship, ready to go to work. Before we work, we go and pay our respects to the community. It's all very traditional. There's an exchange of small gifts. We tell everybody, we introduce everybody. And then I say to the chief, would you join me in the submarine for a dive? And what a moment that is when he says, sure thing. And he gets changed and he comes out for a submarine dive. I tell you, that's an amazing experience. We're very lucky too that we're able to invite community members onto the ship. So they come on, we give them a good tour of everything, including inside and outside the submarine. All the cameras, the scientists can show their work. We take them through all of our technical capabilities and how we go about it. And then typically we'll show them some Pristine Seas films. So you can see this is a mixed community here, a community of elders from Vanuatu. We then get school groups come on, and they're a much more structured visit. We've got these printed carpets that we lay out on the floor. I call them magic carpets. And we can, with the science team's help, run the students through a very short marine science part of their curriculum. So they get a chance to see what's healthy, what isn't, how to measure it, what we're looking for. And they do a sort of dry land version of a marine science dive right on board the ship with us. And then we get local fishermen arrive, and that's always great fun because, you know, fishermen arrive, they're busy working, and a small boat comes along. They want to know, who are you and what are you doing? So we always say, hey, National Geographic, I'm Paul Rose, expedition leader. Come on, have a cup of tea, and we'll tell you what we're about. And that's great because we learn from them. They're interested as to who we are. What are we doing here? Maybe they've heard about us and they're interested. So it means that we can, you know, you can see here, they're all having Coke. And I remember these guys really loved the biscuits. The biscuits all disappeared. They come on and then we can learn from them. And with this particular group, we learned about the way they were managing a tuna fishery. They had noticed that the tuna from one particular part of the island were all young. And so they thought, right, this is the juvenile area here, so we won't fish that. So this is their own protected area. We don't need to tell these men that more protection equals more fish. They know it. You know, we all know that if you protect an area, the fish don't know they're protected, so they swim outside. And on that spillover area, as we call it, the fishing is really good. And in fact, a large marine protected area, the biomass increases about 600% in a very short length of time. And the fishing around it on that spillover effect is really good. More protection equals more fish. These people don't need to know that. They know it, but they tell us how they do it. There's a lovely shared learning. And it's a nice part of the film here because on this film here, it's a fisherman in Chile, and he's explaining on the film how he does it to a bunch of Vanuatu fishermen. Wonderful when they come on board. And here's a mixed community because we say open door. So even though we're very busy, when we're alongside or near a community, we say it's open door. And then all kinds come on. You see some young ones here. And in fact, the youngest one we had on in Vanuatu, which was only a few months ago, was 18 months old. So this little one got a special award as being the youngest member of National Geographic Pristine Seas. We do our best to communicate in every possible way, use all of our tools, such as videos just like this. And we do something called these Classroom Explorer sessions, which are great. We set them up maybe 2 or 3 for every expedition, and they run globally. So across lots of different time zones to hundreds and hundreds of schools. And if we do it regionally, maybe it's only a few schools, but we're catching all of the regional people. You can imagine how they work. We can't see what's happening. You can just see loads of little thumbnails, but we'll get the word that says for us to introduce ourselves. And then someone will say, oh yeah, hello, it's, you know, Mrs. Smith in Kansas. And then you hear all these young voices, hello. And little Paul Rose comes to the front of the class and asks a question, you know, can you eat submarine sandwiches in your submarine? We say, yes, of course you can, you know. And then the next one, it's someone in a school bus in Singapore with a very detailed, complex science question. But either way, we spend about 45 minutes giving them a tour of the ship, our activities, and sharing that knowledge. And I think that's one of the best things we can do. I know I would have loved it when I was at school to think, well, wow, I'm suddenly being made welcome on an ocean expedition. And we have a sister program that is called Revive Our Ocean. So based on what we've just explained about the value of local knowledge in coastal communities, here's our sister program, Revive Our Ocean. I have a short film on what that means, and I'll explain it after.
Ama burada bilinçsiz avcılık yapılması bu alanları tahrip edilmesi anlamına geliyor ve bu da denizler için ve küçük ölçekli balıkçı için ciddi bir eksiklik.
Η θάλασσα έχει αλλάξει με τα χρόνια.
It was like a nuclear war happened underwater.
Kalau bukan kita yang jaga, siapa lagi yang akan menjaganya?
Ciddi bir gelişme oldu. Bölgedeki hem turizmcileri hem de balıkçıları olumlu bir şekilde etkiledi.
Revive Our Ocean is exactly what we need now to scale marine protection worldwide.
Reviving the ocean is not just about conservation, it's about securing the foundations of the life of Earth.
It's a very important message because sometimes when we speak about marine conservation, people think, it means we can't eat fish or our local fishing grounds will be off limits and we can't fish. But that's the last thing we mean. We mean that if we protect the ocean, we'll get more fish. It becomes more sustainable for everybody. And for me, these experiences like, the Southern Line Islands with the beautiful juvenile blacktip sharks, these experiences are absolutely powerful. There's a sense when you're in those waters and you see marine life like that, it really hits us. So we'll do almost anything to communicate the value of that message. And I was fortunate enough in a big communication burst to help co-design the Lego submarine. And here's the story of that.
Can we find creatures in the sea no one has ever seen before?
Oh, yes. 95% of the world's oceans are still unexplored, so we discover new creatures all the time. To find them, we used awesome submarines like the Deep Sea, which has a big dome window to look through, lasers to measure the creatures we see, and a robotic arm to take samples from the ocean floor.
There's a creative way to solve any problem, and sometimes it makes the world a better place. Visit lego.com with your family to find out more.
So for me, if you're thinking about exploration or the value of exploration, you can't go wrong with the ocean, because in my life of diving, which is 56 years, when I first went in the water at Portland Bill, and I couldn't have described it in these terms that way, but I just had that sense of freedom exploring this vast space. But the reality is at that time and today, the ocean remains the least understood, least explored, largest, most powerful, and least protected ecosystem on the planet. So if you've got any spirit of exploration, get in the ocean right now. Or if diving isn't for you, at least clock onto ocean environmental affairs. And it's the ideal trigger to understand all environmental affairs that affect us in the world today. So thanks for joining me. Thanks for listening to my story about ocean. And I'm ready for some questions if you have any. Questions, comments, guidance, or advice. Over to you. Thank you.